and Conrad Thompson, talking about the great years of World Championship Wrestling, the NWA, and Jim Crockett Promotions. And now let's go to the ring. Here's your co-host. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to What Happened When with Tony Schiavone. Tony, what's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, Conrad, and hello, slapdicks around the world. It's good to be back with you here on a Monday. We're going to talk what happened when. One of my favorite years, 1992. And the reason it's one of my favorite years, Conrad, as I've watched Halloween Havoc. Once again, I was one skinny son of a bitch back then. I was good looking. Tell you what, I would have fucked me back then.
Oh, my gosh.
Woo.
Well,
so there you go.
It's too bad you had that button on a fur coat, though.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
That's a shame.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, hopefully we sound a little better this week, guys. We need to apologize. Our last 2 weeks we taped here at the Conradison. Right before we sat down to tape, we made some adjustments here in my studio. I made a rookie mistake. We didn't test it. It didn't sound as awesome as we'd like to, but we've worked hard this week to make sure we sound as good as we can. And no, we don't sound perfect. Fuck, I'm a redneck, and he's Tony Schiavone. How good did you expect it to be?
Well, truth be told, I'm a redneck, too. I come from a much smaller town than you do, Conrad, much smaller. Craigsville, Virginia. At the last check on Wikipedia, was like 960 people. So, talking redneck, we're talking backwoods, hillbilly redneck for me. I'm so hillbilly, I thought at one time I was a Tennessee Volunteer fan. So, just a couple of rednecks messing up. But we'll try to turn things around this week.
So, if you're from a town that size, does that mean that Lois is not only your wife, but also your cousin?
I never had any cousins that good looking.
Oh, the whole time.
No, she actually, Lois was an Army brat, and I met her in Greensboro, North Carolina. And when I first started doing baseball, so she was kind of a city girl. You know what? Here's a story. The first time I ever ate Chinese food, right. I was 23 years old on a date with Lois. How about that?
Wow.
I never ate that Chinese stuff before. What are you talking about, chopsticks? Shit. That was me, man. That was me on the first date with Lois. The good news is that even though I couldn't eat with them chopsticks, I did get laid that night. Woo!
On the second date?
First,
wow.
First, yeah.
She knows what she likes.
Yeah, well, apparently so, and that's why I married her, because I was saying there ain't no way I'm going to have another good-looking woman this good-looking when I have sex with me, so I went for it all. Anyway, that's another story, and I'm sure glad she's not listening right now.
Well, I'll tell you what, she did bust your ass on Twitter this past week.
Well, did she ever?
There was a picture of Deborah sitting in your lap from WrestleCon, and I guess you got maybe a little too excited in the picture, and she tried to shut that shit down. Yeah,
she sure did. She absolutely did. So,
are we allowed to talk about Deborah anymore, or is she banned?
No, we can talk about Deborah. I got to see her, and God, she looks great. And I got to see Medusa, and oh my God, she looks great. And I got to see Marlena. Oh my God, does she look great? Man, I was just, well, look, now you're laughing. I know what you're thinking. And everybody's out there thinking, oh, here's that old fat ass from Hillbilly from Virginia is being a creep again. Deborah McMichael and Medusa and Terry Boatwright, Marlena, or Alexandra York, they were all my friends. And here's one thing that Lois understands about me. When I was growing up, my best friend when I was growing up was a girl. So I've always been able to get along with women. It's not a creep thing. It's not it's just the way it is. I get along with women. And you probably knew that from hanging out with me during WrestleMania weekend, that I got along with women better than I did with men.
Well, it's probably because you try to hug every woman you meet and tell every guy you meet that he's a sack of shit slapdick.
Well, and that's probably usually true. Okay. I mean, I probably got along better with Bruce's wife than I did with him. Okay. And, my son Chris was with us, and obviously I get along much better with his wife than I do my son. So it's just a matter of female versus male.
So now that we've kind of spilled the beans, so to speak, and that you've met Bruce's wife, Stephanie, do you think for the good of the show, we could do an old Roddy Piper, Ric Flair, ABC version of What Happened When wife swap, and let Bruce live with Lois for a week and you live with Stephanie for a week. I mean, that feels like a really good spinoff opportunity.
That sounds good, and I think on the surface it would work, but I don't think Lois has been out of this house since 97, so I don't know if she even knows where the door is. So, and that's not my fault. That's just the way she is. She doesn't want to go anywhere. But, yeah, Bruce reminded me that he had dinner at my house when I lived in Connecticut back in 1989, and Lois and I were trying to remember that, and I said, well, it was just some asshole from the office that we had dinner with. She said, oh, yeah, I remember him now. But it's the first time I had seen Bruce in forever, and it was good seeing him. We had a great weekend. Great weekend to meet the fans. Got to know George Gray, the one-man gang. He couldn't believe it. He said, everybody coming by is talking about that damn podcast. I ought to have a podcast. I said, well, then start one, George. Jesus, come on now. And literally, I told you this, 100% of the people who came by said, enjoy the podcast. And my son, Chris Schiavone, went on a cruise this past week, and there was somebody with a Schiavone shirt on the cruise.
Oh, wow.
And Chris had a shirt, and Chris has one of the shirts, and he walked in. They looked at each other, and the guy said, you listen to that podcast? Chris said, yes, I do. And his wife said, well, that's his dad. So I thought that was a big deal. So
that's
I'm
awesome.
pretty excited about that. Yeah.
Very
Absolutely.
cool. Well, hey, you know who else listens to the podcast that I didn't know, but now I do know they listen, and that's Lady Blossom.
All right.
Yeah, she messaged me on one of the social medias and asked if she could come on our show. And I said that we didn't have guests on our joint show, but you maybe had a private show that you'd love to have her on.
See, well, let me just say this. I got along with Lady Blossom, too, because as you know by now.
She had blonde hair and big boobs. So
no, I get along with females, okay? It's not I just do. I'm just overall based unlike most people had read about me on the internet, and certainly you have found out now, I'm just a nice guy, Conrad. And if you don't believe that, you can go fuck yourself.
That's awesome. Well, let's get into it. Let's get into what happened when WCW presented Halloween Havoc 1992. But before we get to the show itself, let's do a little bit of a build-up. Let's set the stage. The August 2nd TV taping was a big show. Jake Roberts makes his debut, and Ron Simmons beats Vader for the world title in about 10 minutes. Prior to this change happening, Vader had been advertised to defend the title against Sting, but Jake debuted from the crowd and gave Sting 2 DDTs on a chair, which forced Sting to be carried out on a stretcher and, of course, unable to wrestle in the main event. So what should you do? Well, you should have Bill Watts and Grizzly Smith draw a name out of a bowl to decide who will wrestle Vader. Ron Simmons wins the drawing and wins the title. Of the title win, Dave Meltzer wrote in The Observer, supposedly neither Vader nor Simmons knew for sure about the title change until they got to the building that night. The best thing about Simmons winning the title is that hopefully they'll never again do we have to hear this promotion do outdated race-baiting hype every time an African-American gets a title shot. They did interviews in the building until about 1 a.m. after the show for airing as early as this weekend, and there were implicit instructions made not to bring up the subject of race relating to Ron Simmons winning the title. WCW held a press conference in the CNN Center on Tuesday afternoon, introducing Simmons as the new world champion. Tony, we talk about Watts a lot on the show, or we will, I'm sure. We'll probably talk about race too. But for now, do you think Ron deserved to win the world title here, or was this just a PR move more so than the right call for business, at least in your opinion?
Well, I'm not so sure it was the right call for business. Ron looked great, was a good worker. I thought was a very decent talker. Did I think he deserved this push at that time? No. But I don't know if it was a PR move more than that's what Bill Watts wanted, because Bill Watts had success with
Junkyard Dog in Mid-South.
Yeah, right. Junkyard Dog in the Mid-South and pushing black wrestlers. I don't see why we have to turn this into a race thing. I think the fact that they gave him the title shows the world to me that Bill Watts was not a racist, and with Bill, maybe in private he was, but shows the world that he thought that you could make money with a black champion. What's wrong with that?
Well, in theory, the goal would be, at least based on what you read, he would think, hey, if we put the belt on a black guy, black fans will come out to support it. So let's sell some tickets to some black folks and let's make, quote unquote, one of their own the champion. And that worked for Junkyard Dog in Mid-South, and seemingly that was the plan here. Wouldn't you agree?
Yep, that was the plan. No question.
So let's talk about Jake Roberts coming into WCW. Meltzer wrote, apparently, in order to get his release from the WWF that would allow him to work for WCW, Roberts gave up his rights to all future merchandising income, since the stuff with his likeness is going to continue to be sold for a long time. Tony, on a scale of 1 to Judy Bagwell on a poll, how bad was this decision by Jake to let the WWF royalties go in order to come work for WCW?
It was a 1. It was a terrible decision. It was great to have Jake with us because I think you and I would both agree one of the best performers in the business.
Sure.
As far as being able to work and being able to talk of all time. But let's face it. And I don't know. Have you read a number about how much he lost in royalties? After that, it had to be a lot of money.
It had to be a considerable amount. I know for sure that, all these years later, Ric Flair does really, really well just on royalties. And this isn't happening when, Rick is fresh off TV, so to speak. And he had the whole snake gimmick. I mean, he was one of the more iconic characters through the 80s. So this is probably a considerable amount. But here's what I have read. Allegedly, when Jake does this, he believes he has a big guaranteed money deal in place with Kip Fry. But, of course, Jake can't sign with WCW until he's done with Titan. So he's got to get released before he can actually sign this contract. So he starts working hard to get out from under Titan. And then when he finally does, too late, now Watts is in control. And he says there's no way he's honoring the contract that Jake had been negotiating with Kip. So by now, Jake's now free of his Titan deal and has no place to go. So he has to just accept what Watts is offering, which is around $1,000 a match.
Yikes.
That's a pretty rough deal.
Yeah, it is a rough deal. And, Bill Watts literally walked into the WCW offices one day as the new boss. No one saw that coming. I mean, well, maybe Ross did because I know he and Ross were buddies. But I remember just being in there and all of a sudden he walks in. I'm thinking, holy shit. And then things changed a great deal. It was very much run by like a smaller business was run instead of giving away money. And, listen, Bill Watts made money back in the old Mid-South days by keeping a lot of the money himself, right? So he approached, and probably rightfully so, he approached the money that he was given to run a company with like it was his own money. And for better or worse, that was the way he ran things.
So when WCW first exists and, Turner is buying out Jim Crockett Promotions, they kind of had an opportunity to go a few different directions. And I want to talk about this in long form one day, but they could have tried to be something different, which was, just as big and just as expensive as what the WWF was doing, or they could have tried to do something that was smaller but not going to lose money and still profitable, but not compete necessarily. And instead, they kind of went with another option, which is to say, we're going to try to do this, but with less money and shittier wrestlers and shittier production, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just a shittier presentation, not wrestlers. So that just results in mounting losses. But one of the things I've always found interesting about WCW is there's so much fuzzy math. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but the television income went on the Turner Home Entertainment books, and the pay-per-view income went on the Turner Home Entertainment books. But the cost associated with both of those shows went on the WCW ledger. Is that right?
Okay. Yes, that's right.
So really process that from a business standpoint. If you have to have this expense this overhead, so to speak, in order to put these shows on, and these shows do make money, but you don't get any credit for the money, that goes on another ledger, then there's no chance you're going to be able to show a profit. So Bill Watts comes in from Jack Petrick, it's my understanding, to say, hey, just cut the losses. And somewhere in here, Petrick gets retired, whether that was his choice or not, and now Shaw and Bob Dew are in control. And they just want, hey, man, cut the losses. Figure this out. So Watts comes in and does a lot. And we're not going to get into all of it, but I really, really hope that you guys vote for something 1992 again so we can talk about that in the future, because the stuff he puts in place is seemingly crazy, but I guess if you're trying to cut money, cut expenses, you do what you got to do. Let's talk about Jake, though. We talked about the debut. He comes out of the crowd, gives Sting a DDT on a chair, a couple of them, actually. This brings out all the baby faces. So Roberts pulls out a giant snake, and all the faces scatter. So this is good news if you're a fan of that gimmick, because Jake Roberts didn't do the snake gimmick prior to the WWF, and he's apparently carrying that with him here. Supposedly, Tony, this was kept a secret from the boys. Meltzer wrote, most of the wrestlers were shocked backstage when Roberts showed up doing the angle, even though it was generally assumed Roberts was the bad Bob on the August booking sheets, and there were some expectations that he would debut at center stage the previous Monday. Roberts wasn't backstage before the show began, and almost nobody even knew he was in the building or in town until he did the angle. Do you remember him coming in, what his reputation at the time was? Were folks excited to see him coming in? How'd they keep this a secret?
How they kept it a secret is, now we're talking that Bill Watts is running the business, very old school style, so it was very easy to keep a secret.
Yeah.
And basically he kayfabed everybody. I didn't know he was coming in. I think all of us in production, and me especially, because I had been in the WWF when Jake Roberts was there.
Right.
I was pretty excited about it. Now, his reputation, I always looked at it, his reputation is what I saw on TV. Good worker, good sell, great talker, and a pretty good gimmick. So what the boys felt about his reputation, I don't know. Now, I understand what his personal reputation had been for years, and I understand that. As far as I'm concerned, if he can draw money for us and help us with numbers, that didn't bother me at all.
Dave reports that Halloween Havoc had been moved from Baltimore to Philadelphia for reasons having to do mainly with satellite transmission problems. What the hell does that mean? I never even heard of such shit.
I've never heard of such shit either. I don't know where he got that one from. But if you can have a satellite transmission in Philadelphia,
why couldn't you in Baltimore?
Yeah. Maybe I don't know. And they did those via truck. So you just drive the truck from one to the other. Maybe it just costs more to run an event in Baltimore than Philadelphia. That's what I'm thinking. And I don't know, transmission problems.
Meltzer reports that Jake has been getting huge babyface reactions at all the house shows except when he's matched against Sting. And Dave seems shocked by this, and I'm not trying to be armchair quarterback here, but shouldn't this have been obvious considering that you debut Jake as a heel? People are going to cheer him because he's perceived as being a big star from the WWF. Shouldn't you have started him as a babyface and then turned him heel?
Yes, you should have. However, that's not how Bill Watts did business. Bill Watts did business based on his decisions only and not based on what happened in the WWF.
Well, it's like when a guy in the WWF now, if he's a heel, but people respect him and he goes down with an injury, when he comes back, he's a babyface. A dozen years ago when Triple H went down, he comes back at the Royal Rumble as a super babyface. He left a heel, but people were happy to see him back. He was a babyface. Right. A couple years ago, same thing with Seth Rollins, leaves as a heel. But when he comes back, even though they're trying to make him a heel, they're cheering him in his return because they're happy he's back. So it feels like that's what Jake's going to get everywhere his first couple of times out.
Yeah, and that's right, because WWF, and especially in Philadelphia or in Baltimore in the Northeast where the WWF is strong, is strong, to me it was, and again, I had been there and I knew how over these guys were up there. To me, it was kind of silly trying to make him a heel. But that's what Watts wanted to do. And not only that, I think another thing that Watts wanted to do, and it goes back to this, in making Sting the star, and Sting was a star at that time, and of course as time went on became an even bigger star. to make Sting a bigger star, you got to put him with people who can really work.
Right.
And Roberts was one of those guys that could do that.
Mike Mooneyham writes that the locker room morale was very low at this point, and it was mostly centered around Watts.
Right.
One top guy tells him, morale is the worst I've ever seen. Nobody's being paranoid, but everybody knows this guy's not going to pay. And so we'll get into Watts a little later, I'm sure, on a different show in more greater detail. But again, his job when he comes in here is to cut expenses. So he's going to try to do that everywhere he can. In the Observer, Dave breaks down business year over year, and I was fascinated by this. From July of 91 to 92, it really jumped out at me. Prior to Flair leaving WCW in July of 91, they were averaging 3,490 fans at a paid show. Once he left, it fell to 1,305.
Wow.
By 92, business is down another 28.6%. Overall revenues from year over year, from 91 to 92, this July mark, was down 47.6%. So it's no wonder to me that WCW needs Watts to come in and cut costs. Wouldn't you agree, Tony?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think we all knew he was going to do this. And that was the reason that morale was down.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody realized that Watts was going to cut costs. He was going to cut my salary too, and that's something that we can talk about later. But everybody knew that he was going to cut costs. Everybody knew he was going to do things old school. And I guess the wrestlers thought that now with this new company, Turner Broadcasting, we can make a lot of money. And now all of a sudden, Bill Watts comes in, who ran Mid-South Wrestling. And some of the wrestlers probably remember the days. I was not in Mid-South Wrestling, but I understand. I was talking to One Man Gang about this. They had some of the worst road trips ever in Mid-South Wrestling. You really had to the point to where you were working your ass off and not making much money. And here comes Bill Watts in, old school style, and that's why morale was down.
In September, you guys did a Clash of the Champions, and this was a bit of an anniversary. It's Clash of the Champions 20. You hold it at Center Stage in Atlanta, and that only holds about 1,000 folks. But you guys only managed to draw 500. It did a 3.7 rating, which drew 2.9 million viewers, which was considered good. But, Tony, when you guys are only drawing 500 folks to a Clash in Atlanta, I mean, you got to be working on your resume at that point, are you not?
Well, I'm worried. I'm not working on my resume because, shit, where am I going to go? I'm not going to go back to the WWE. They didn't want me back. I tried to go back, and they didn't want me. What am I going to do? Do some independent shows? And, it's not easy for an announcer who has done wrestling to do some crossover stuff. I've been fortunate since that time to be able to do some, but I was kind of stuck, man. I was worried even more when Bill Watts walked in, because when Watts walked in, knowing that he and JR had worked together and been good friends, I thought my career was basically over.
Right.
So that I was concerned about that. But as time wore on and I got to work with Bill a lot longer, that was not the case. And I'm going to be honest, I loved working with him. Look, the Center Stage sucked. Absolutely sucked as a wrestling venue. I know I've said that before, and we've had some responses on Twitter that said, I like Center Stage. How can you say it sucked? You had to work it to know what it was like. The backstage area was terrible, blah, blah, blah. It was just not a good place. It was not a good place to hold in a wrestling event. So I didn't enjoy being there. 500 at a Clash in Atlanta. Yeah, I was worried about it, but what can you do, man? You just got to keep on doing your shit and drawing your paycheck, and hopefully something will change. And by God, eventually it did down the road, didn't it?
It sure did.
Yeah.
At the end of this Clash of the Champions special, you guys run a video promoting Halloween Havoc. Do you remember this video?
No. What was it?
Oh, yes, you do. It's the little mini movie, Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal.
Uh-huh.
You don't remember this?
No, I don't.
This is amazing. Well, we're going to link it to the very top of our Twitter right now. So by the time you're listening, it's already up there. The poll will be up there, but then right below it will be the link to this. You have got to go out of your way to see this shit. You are not going to believe what you're going to see here. It's a little mini movie where Sting finds Jake Roberts and he presents him with the wheel. And this is the most WCW thing ever. And it gets lots of props in the Observer, but it is fantastic. I guess it runs about 5 minutes. So if you've got 5 minutes, go ahead and cruise over to @WHW Monday on Twitter, and you'll see this. It's outstanding.
It's more WCW than the Desperados. It's more WCW than Cactus Jack having amnesia and not remembering his family.
That's what I mean. Those little mini movies, and then the little mini movie with Sting on the island with the British Bulldogs, the White Castle of Fear shit. All of that is so This one here, it's outstanding.
Okay, I don't remember it, which means I didn't work on it. I mean, I worked on a lot of that. I was all caught up in the Desperado shit. I worked on that, man.
Let me run through this. There's a midget in this, or a little person. Sorry,
a little sawed off runt.
And at the end, the guys kind of go nose to nose, not really nose to nose, but they do like a stare off. Yeah. And lasers shoot out of their eyes at each other. You don't remember this?
God. Oh no! It sounds exciting already.
It is. It's outstanding. Freaking laser beams. There you go. So it's worth mentioning here that Cactus Jack, who you just mentioned in another little angle I'm sure we'll get to one day, he is not on Halloween Havoc wrestling. He's there, but not working. And the reason he's not working is he has a torn groin and a badly injured knee coming out of the Clash. So he's off for the Halloween Havoc. And at this point, he only has about 4 months left on his guaranteed money deal with WCW. So people start to wonder, hey, is this the end of Cactus Jack? Meltzer writes, Cactus had an unbelievable match with Rhodes on Main Event Sunday in a Falls Count Anywhere match that he won with an elbow off the apron. However, Cactus's body will never hold up doing matches like that with all the hard bumps on concrete. You have to admire his guts and dedication, and nobody works harder, but he's going to destroy himself if he doesn't calm his style down. Tony, you were there for a lot of that. What did you think of Cactus's style?
I thought he was tremendous. And I know it sounds odd now because I'm kind of linked to him. But I thought what made Cactus great was I thought his interviews were spectacular. They were different. They were oddball. And I just loved him. And during WrestleMania weekend, I was at the JW Marriott. I told you this story. Most of the fans don't realize this, but I was there meeting a friend. I had another friend there, and I went to the JW Marriott on Friday, I believe.
The JW Marriott was the company hotel, for those of you who don't know
was the WWE hotel.
Yeah.
During WrestleMania weekend. So I saw a lot of people. I saw Ted DiBiase. I saw Medusa in the lobby. I saw Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, Arn Anderson, Ricky Steamboat. I don't know. But as I'm walking out, here comes Cactus Jack. And I'm thinking, oh, hell, here he is. So I have my Georgia baseball hat on, my sunglasses on, and I put my arm around him, and I say, hey, Cactus, longtime fan. He said, do I know you? And I said, yes, my name is Tony Schiavone. He went, oh, shit. I said, you and I said, basically me more than you, because your career is much more than Tony Schiavone's line. I said, but my career is kind of tied to you because people remember the butts in the seats line back then. And he said, yeah, you remember when you called me at the house and apologized and all that stuff? And I said, yeah, the fans. I said, I guess the fans never let me forget that. Many of the fans do. And I guess I'm kind of honored about that because I guess it makes me feel like I was more important than I really was, that I would have an impact in that. But he and I talked for a little bit. You know, he's having trouble walking around now. And that is because of the crazy shit that he did. Yeah. There was one time we were at Philadelphia, and it wasn't this event. But we were in Philadelphia, and he told me, he said, I'm going to try to take a bump. The Philadelphia Civic Center had a balcony where the upper deck was. He said, I'm going to take a bump off of that down onto the floor, onto the concrete. And I remember saying, you know what, Mick, you're going to kill yourself. You're absolutely going to kill yourself, and it's not worth it. It's absolutely not worth it. He did crazy, outlandish bumps because he wanted to do something different than no one did. His Bang Bang interviews were great. He could talk. One of the most memorable performers of my career, without a doubt.
Dave wrote, Jake Roberts is probably the best in the business on the stick right now, but in the ring, his main events are well below WCW standard main events. Would this be a fair assessment to you, Tony?
What is well below? What were WCW standard main events back then? I thought, and when we talk about this match, I thought Roberts was really good. He did a great job in this match that we're going to be talking about of selling the shoulder, and so. I don't know what WCW standards are at that time. Dave Meltzer needs to tell me what that is.
Let's talk about
is that what he thinks they are, or is that what somebody called and told him they were? I don't know. You tell me. I mean, would WCW standards been Rick Rude putting a side headlock, Masahiro, whatever his name is, for 5 minutes? Whatever, is that the work rate you're talking about?
Yeah. Okay,
so fuck that one. Go to the next one.
I can't believe I never heard about this. I can't wait to ask you. Were you at the September 6th show in Dallas where a man in a walker in his 70s pulled out a pistol and fired a shot?
No, I was not.
So here's what happened. September 6th, it's Dallas. Sting and Nikita are tagging against Jake Roberts and Super Invader, which is Hercules. Okay. And a man in a walker in his 70s pulled out a pistol and fired a shot. He either shot the ground and the bullet ricocheted and went through the ceiling, or someone grabbed his hand as he went to shoot and slammed it down, so he shot the ground. Anyway, the man whose name wasn't released was taken to a mental hospital afterwards. He had been a regular at the Sportatorium for more than 30 years and had no previous incidents. And everybody, of course, bailed out of the ring. But you don't remember ever hearing about a gun being fired in WCW?
I do not. I don't remember that. I can remember my Uncle John taking his steel cane and hitting Greg Valentine over the head with it. But I don't remember shots being fired. And this guy, if he was taken to a mental hospital and released afterwards, he probably could have gotten a front office job in TBS.
I was going to say, it's a wonder y'all didn't follow him on his release, make it into a mini movie, and then set him up with a feud with Cactus Jack.
Yeah, lasers coming out of his gun. Yeah. And lasers that...
Right.
I want to thank you, Conrad. You have turned my life around, and you've let me relive the years, a reminder of how fucked up that we really were at times.
You got paid for this shit. Isn't that crazy? Now you're getting paid twice. It's amazing.
Isn't that something?
It's amazing. Johnny B. Bad, who was a mainstay in WCW during this time, he's also not going to be on this Halloween Havoc show we're talking about. He's out with a blown-out elbow. We are going to talk about the tag titles a lot. Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham won those NWA and WCW tag belts from Dr. Death Steve Williams and Bam Bam Terry Gordy on September 20th at Center Stage. They went about 20 minutes, and it got a 2.5-star match, which ended when Windham pinned Gordy after Rhodes bulldogged him. So this was Williams and Gordy's last match before leaving for a 4-week tour of Japan, and then they'll be back 3 weeks prior to, they'll be back in time for this tag team tournament. And then of course, Halloween Havoc. They announced though that Gordy and Williams were supposed to take on the Steiners at Halloween Havoc. But Rick Steiner was injured on September 23rd when he had a pectoral muscle torn from his sternum. So he had to have surgery in Birmingham. And the ironic part about this is, had he signed the contract that Bill Watts wanted them to take for less money, they would have been responsible for their own medical. So he would have had to pay for his surgery and rehab out of pocket. Because he didn't and stood his ground, WCW picks up the tab. He's going to be out about 6 weeks, which means he'll probably be out for the duration of his contract. And everybody expects at the end of that the Steiners are probably gone. But we'll cover what happened in the meantime. It also comes out in the Observer here that if they go to 7 games in the World Series, it will be head-to-head with Halloween Havoc. How the fuck does that happen, Tony?
The thought was that wrestling fans are going to watch us and not watch the World Series.
But why roll the dice there?
I was always told by Turner Home Entertainment that we didn't have a choice about where, if we wanted a pay-per-view in October, that was the date that we had. I was told that, we were told that by cable operators.
I see. I understand.
Okay. Now, that could have been just bullshit, but that's what we were told. Because, I mean, listen, I can remember Halloween Havoc 91, the Braves and the Twins in the World Series.
Crazy.
92. Yeah, 92 Braves and the Blue Jays.
Crazy.
Crazy. I can remember 93 the Blue Jays and the Phillies. 94 there was no. I mean, I can remember where I was for the World Series based on where I was for Halloween Havoc.
It's just silly.
Yeah, it's stupid. But hey, it's WCW.
Can you imagine a scenario where Vince McMahon runs a pay-per-view head-to-head with Super Bowl?
No, I can't remember. But I think Vince had a little bit more stroke with cable operators than we did. And shouldn't have, because we were fucking Turner Broadcasting.
That's what I'm saying.
Crying out loud.
That's what I'm saying. I just think WCW didn't care. Turner didn't care.
They didn't. They didn't give a shit about us.
I found it interesting in my research. I was able to discover what front row tickets were for Halloween Havoc 1992. And considering what they cost now, and if you haven't checked in a while, Ticketmaster sells front row tickets. That's what they call platinum seating. So you pay a premium to sit in the front row, and they don't just let it go for just the regular standard price. Yeah. It's like $1,000 or $1,500 for a front row seat to a WWE pay-per-view in 2017. Guess how much it was for Halloween Havoc in 1992?
For Halloween Havoc in 92?
Yeah.
$100.
$50. $50, your front row. It's amazing to me.
I was way overpaid then. With that price in mind, One Man Gang and I were talking about, wonder how much ringside tickets are for WrestleMania. So I looked on Ticketmaster, couldn't find any. I looked on StubHub.
Oh, it's crazy.
It was one ticket for sale for ringside WrestleMania. I showed it to George. $5,200 on StubHub. Selling the ringside ticket for WrestleMania. $5,200.
Yeah.
Don't know if they got it, but Jesus.
It's probably more than anybody got as a pay-per-view payoff for Halloween Havoc 1992.
Yeah, absolutely.
Watts puts down a new policy starting with Halloween Havoc 92, and for this pay-per-view, all pay-per-views moving forward and clashes, he decides that all the matches must be significant matches. No more throwaways and squash matches on the big shows, which is a contrast from the way they've been doing it. And he also wants clean finishes, top to bottom, similar to the way New Japan had been doing their big shows. And he had kind of kicked around the idea of putting Barry Windham in the office. Barry Windham had just turned 32 in July, and they had talked about forcing him into retirement. Ultimately, that doesn't happen, but they do want to start grooming him for the office, so they let him be assistant booker with Dusty Rhodes. Do you remember this transition that Windham tries to make here?
Yeah, I remember the transition he tried to make into thinking that, that Barry never really wanted to be in the office, I don't think. I remember Magnum TA being in the office with us. You remember that?
I do. Well, why do you think Barry Windham at 32? I understand they're trying to find something for Magnum, not being disrespectful. I get it.
Right. And Magnum and Dusty were very tight.
Right.
So Dusty took care of Magnum, and he should have. So
why do you think there's any sort of discussion when he's 32 years old about Barry Windham working in the office?
Maybe Barry went and said he'd like to do that.
Just seems odd to me.
Yeah, it does. And to me, and on this pay-per-view that we're about to discuss, there was a talk about a youth movement, and Bill Watts was big into the youth movement. You'll hear a lot of high-impact wrestling, and Bill Watts was big into that. So I guess maybe Bill Watts thought that Barry was a little bit too old at age 32, and he was old school, second generation, and they could use his smarts. Barry was, again, like a Jake Roberts, a great worker.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So.
Lots of turnover here in the office. Guys wanting to leave, guys wanting to come in, but it comes out that Shane Douglas, Eric Watts, and Dustin Rhodes are going to be pushed as the top baby faces. And they also, in an effort to cut down on some expenses, start demanding that wrestlers carpool together in groups of 4 to cut down on overhead.
So now you know why things were bad,
right,
as far as morale was concerned. Just another one right there, right?
Dusty Rhodes starts coming to the house shows, and he's monitoring those quite a bit. And he's picking up these duties after Bill Watts drops in on a house show and apparently is furious and dresses down several wrestlers, and then even starts instituting performance fines. So if he doesn't think that your match was as good as it should have been, he will fine you $1,000. Now, the top guys at the time are making $750 with a performance bonus of $250 if they're any good. But if you have a bad match, you went in the red. So it's a wonder why people are unhappy.
Yeah. But apparently Turner didn't care because that's what they wanted.
Yeah, they wanted overhead cut, and they wanted, big production. And there's a whole story about Brian Pillman and Bill Watts we'll get to that most of you know, but there's so much detail that I didn't know that I can't wait for us to cover, but this isn't the time. Bruno Sammartino, though, is on Halloween Havoc, which is our topic today, and he does color on the WCW show that airs on September 26th. And on this same show, I believe, Tony, you did an empty arena interview with him, and Dave says it's one of the best babyface promos he'd seen in a long time. Do you remember how that came to be and how you guys put that together?
Don't remember how it got it put together, but I remember the interview, and the reason it was one of the best babyface promos in a long time is that Bruno was one of the great babyfaces of all time.
He supposedly is reached out to by Watts, who wants to use Sammartino's relationship to help get him buildings in the Northeast. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. I do remember that.
Why doesn't that come about? Why doesn't Sammartino agree to do that, you think?
I just don't think that he wanted to push his weight around with getting buildings. Sammartino loved the business, but I don't know if he really wanted to get involved in that. And if you want to try to use Bruno Sammartino as somebody who is getting buildings, you're going to go up against Vince. It's a losing proposition to try to go up in the Northeast and get buildings. It is.
Even with Sammartino, you think?
Yes, in 92. Absolutely it is.
Well, okay. There's a subtle heel turn for Scott Steiner on TV, and they do this when he wins the TV title. And they're doing this despite telling Scott that there are no plans to turn him heel, but they allegedly put the TV title on him to try to make it easier to negotiate with him about whether or not he'll be pushed. The following week, the Steiners have a meeting with Watts, and remember now, Rick has a torn pec. They're trying to negotiate with Watts, and Bill ain't having it, so they storm out. And they have follow-up conversations. The ones with Rick apparently go well. The ones with Scott, not so much. If you know both guys, that's probably not a surprise.
Right.
The conversations are about whether or not WCW will own their names, because Steiner is not their real last name, or first name either, rather, in the case of one of them. And they don't want to be on a 4-month renewal clause. They essentially agree to a $50,000 pay cut, and everything is mostly agreed upon except the medical coverage. That's a real sticking point for the boys. Rick had just torn his pec the year before. Scott had torn his bicep, so they both missed a lot of time. And eventually, when no resolution is made, Steiner is supposed to drop the title on October 14th in Dothan, and he notifies them 2 days prior that he can't wrestle for 3 weeks because his doctor says he has a thigh bruise. So he's doing this to try to put the kibosh on dropping the belt, breaking them up, turning one of them heel. They want to stay together. They want to be baby faces. They don't have anything to do with it. So now it's understood that the Steiners are done and they're going to the WWF, but they want Scott to drop the belt on the way out. Do you remember any details about this?
I remember no details about it with the exception of I know how unhappy they were, and I knew that Scotty had, decided not to do the job. It could have been handled much differently by Bill, I think. But Bill kind of stood his ground on shit, and so did the Steiners.
Well, and some of it he backs up on. He forces all the guys to move to Atlanta. And if they can't move to Atlanta, then they have to pay their way to get there. He's not paying for travel from anywhere other than Atlanta. Mm-hmm. He's instituting performance bonuses. He's asked Rude to restructure his contract. So there's lots of that stuff that goes on. He even does a buyout with Jimmy Garvin. He wants Garvin out of his contract, which is $186,000 for 17 months. He offers him $180,000. Garvin takes it. So does Michael Hayes. Michael Hayes then signs a new reduced contract to do mostly announcing. Right. But to me, when Garvin gets $180,000 lump sum, it's got to be some sort of sign that while things may be bad, WCW's not going out of business, because long term it wouldn't make any sense to write a guy a check for $180.
Right.
If you feel like you're going to go out of business in the next 17 months and you won't have to pay him.
Right. Yeah. It goes back to something I talked about earlier on one of these podcasts that I think we all knew that as long as Ted Turner was around, they were going to kind of stick with this.
Right.
So I don't think anybody was concerned about WCW going out of business right then. Although, as I've said before, I knew that it was inevitable that it would.
Well, and
I was fucking right, wasn't I?
No, you were. And it's maybe because of shit like this. Here's a WCW story for you. The Control Center that aired on Saturday listed Rhodes and Wyndham as the tag team champions about an hour before the match where they beat Gordy and Williams to win the titles for the first time. Yeah. The match was decent, but seemed to lack in real excitement until the finish. That's Dave Meltzer's report. Who was in charge of shit like this, of making sure that what you're showing on TV is at least in chronological order and you're not giving spoilers in your own show?
Yeah, well, there was one time it happened during Eric Bischoff's reign, and I was responsible for it. And I had some people working under me that I depended on, and they let me down. This one, I don't know. The Control Center, did it air on TBS?
I don't recall.
Okay. If it aired on syndication, it was probably my fault. But if it aired on TBS, I don't know whose fault it was. We just had terrible communication in the company. That's all. Terrible communication in the company. We should have never taped shit like that beforehand. Never.
Michael Hayes, in his new role, is going to work on entrance music for wrestlers, and he's going to do a lot of this with Jimmy Papa. WCW's putting together their version of a wrestling album, and they're calling it Slam Jam #1. It was put together with Grand Theft Records in Texas, and all of this new music was supposed to debut at the pay-per-view and at the Clash that followed that. And they would start selling the album in the wrestling magazines and do videos and stuff like that. This seems like, something Vince McMahon would do, obviously, since he had done the Pile Driver album years before. But It seems curious, the timing here. If we're in cost-cutting mode, how do we have money for this horse shit?
Yeah. There's no answer to that, is it?
No,
there's no answer to that at all.
Dory Funk was hired to scout new talent, and Greg Valentine was brought in to work TV taping with Sting. But when he saw that he wasn't on the future booking sheets and it was just a 4-minute job to Sting here on TV, he walked out rather than do the job. We've often heard in the WWF that when you bring a new guy in, Vince wants you to lose early just to see how you'll react.
Right, that's true. Was
that one of Bill Watts' MOs, or why do you think he would bring him in and have him lose his first match like that?
But I think doing the job to Sting, again, an effort, because Greg Valentine was still a name, an effort to pump Sting up and make Sting a big name. I don't think it was any test for Greg Valentine to see if he would work full-time. I think they just wanted to use him to put Sting over.
Buff Bagwell was not on Halloween Havoc because he had broken his nose in a match. He was supposed to be working with Van Hammer against Diamond Dallas Page and Vinny Vegas, or at least that was one of the initial ideas. And as we start to really build towards this main event type NWA World Title match with Masahiro Chono, Medusa does a segment every Sunday talking about Chono, and they show clips of Chono's wedding and him playing soccer with his kids. But they don't show any complete matches from Japan with him. Whose decision would it have been to not show matches and instead show soccer and weddings?
It would have been Watts' decision. Bill ran everything. I mean, Bill was absolutely in charge of everything. It would have been his decision to do that.
Does that make any sense?
No, of course it doesn't make it. Listen, to me, and I know a lot of people love Japanese wrestling. To me, this thing with Chono, NWA, and didn't mean bullshit. It meant bullshit. It was fuck. It meant fucking nothing. It meant the slapdicks that were ringside in Philadelphia didn't give a shit about Chono or Sasaki or any of those dick licks. Nothing. Right. They didn't.
Oh my gosh.
How old were you in 92?
I turned 11. I was 11 for this show.
Were you watching this stuff at 11?
Fuck no.
Okay. What were you doing at 11?
Anything but this.
Really?
Yeah, this was not a good year. You had me till like the summer.
Okay,
and then I took the fall off. I was done with this horse shit for a little while.
So you walked out when Flair left, right? Is that what you're kind of saying?
No, I was watching then. That was 91. I mean, like, your Beach Blast stuff here, I remember very well the Iron Man match from Beach Blast. And, well, I know you remember that show for the bikini deal. But either way, I remember that really well. I remember this main event here. But some of the undercard stuff is fairly forgettable.
Okay. What I'm trying to get at is that you, as an 11-year-old kid who is into WCW, did not care fuck all about New Japan Pro Wrestling. They did not.
No.
They didn't give fuck all about it. Now, Meltzer and the Rags may have cared about it because they probably went back in the bathroom and jerked off to the shit. But I'm telling you right now, regular fans didn't give fuck all about it.
Coming in a little hot today.
Your eyes widened up when I said that.
Well, because I don't know if you saw or not, but Vince Russo went on a rant where he called all the dirt sheet guys gay.
Who did?
Vince Russo.
Did he really?
Mm-hmm.
Called him gay?
He said for them to be this excited about another man, they've got to be gay.
No, I'm not going to say anything about sexual preference. I'm just saying I use that as an analogy.
No, I'm not saying that, but you just said these guys go in the bathroom and jerk off.
That's an analogy. They're just excited about it, okay? They probably didn't really, I hope they didn't jerk off about New Japan Pro Wrestling. I don't know. I hope they didn't, but that was an analogy. Certainly, you know what I'm talking about. And I know what you're trying to do to me again.
What?
You're trying to paint me as a dipshit. But that's fine if you want to do that.
I'm not trying to paint you as anything. I'm just wanting to get clarification. I don't want people to misquote you.
I didn't say all the dirt sheet guys were gay. That's not true.
No, Vince Russo said that, not you.
Vince Russo said that. And listen, I don't care about anybody's sexual preference.
Except Deborah McMichaels. You care about hers a lot.
To a certain extent, I do. You know, I do understand that you and I started this thing on January 30th.
Yeah.
And coming up on June 6th, I will have been married 36 years. If I make it to 37...
It'll be a fucking miracle.
It'll be a fucking miracle. Thank you very much.
Wait. Now, it's not because of things I'm saying.
No, it's because things you're pushing.
Pushing? Hell.
Yeah, you're pushing. You're pushing me to say, hey, I want to talk about this match. Well, why don't we talk about Deborah's tits, Tony? And then all of a sudden I think about her tits.
Whoa. I never said Deborah's tits on this show.
What did you say?
Well, I just said Deborah McMichael, and you got really excited.
Okay.
That's just the natural course of things.
Yeah. Did I tell you I saw Medusa at WrestleCon?
Yeah, she's actually tweeting me about you now. So
yeah,
I think you got a shot there, brother.
I love her, man. She showed me her tattoo on her lower back, and she said, "You ever seen a girl look this good in her 50s?" And I went, "No, I haven't. Thank you very much." I hugged her, and I love Medusa. I did.
How long did you hold that hug for?
As long as she would let me, and I don't know any. 6.5 seconds.
Okay.
I don't know.
Cool.
Okay. Where the hell were we in this? What are we talking?
Jake Roberts missed several house shows for a concussion, but then he straight up no-showed Chattanooga, leading to this Havoc show. Do you remember any of the problems that started to develop with Jake here, and did his reputation sort of precede him in that regard?
Yeah, it did, but I don't remember problems. Again, house show things were kind of out of my realm. If something happened in a house show, I normally did not know about it. So.
All right, guys, it's time to talk about Halloween Havoc. We're about to get cooking with grease here, so go ahead and pull up WWE's network, and we want you to go to the timestamp 2 hours, 31 minutes, and 48 seconds. We're going to do something fun here in a few minutes, but we're going to give you a minute to get there. So WWE Network, Halloween Havoc 92, 2 hours, 31 minutes, 48 seconds. Let's talk about the card. Overall, Meltzer's poll from the fans gave it 7.2% thumbs up, 87.6% thumbs down, 5.2% thumbs in the middle. What say you?
I'd say thumbs down, especially as we started going towards the main events. I think it started incredibly. I think it started with the Wyndham and Dustin match against Austin and Doc. I thought the heat was great. I thought the fans were into it. But all of a sudden, when that match hit, everybody started sitting on their hands and didn't give a shit about it. And then it went down from there.
Best match poll winner was Brian Pillman, Ricky Steamboat. Worst match poll winner was Rick Rude, Masahiro Chono. Meltzer writes, things are really bad. It's not just Halloween Havoc. It's not just TV ratings hitting record lows. It's not just the WWF canceling house shows left and right. It's not just WCW not canceling house shows, but not drawing any fans. What's bad is the wrestling business is in a tunnel, and there's no sign of light at the end. WCW seems like a runaway train without a conductor headed straight for a wall. And that wall may be called Battle Bowl, but it's probably just called 1993. WCW is in a state of systematic destruction. Halloween Havoc wasn't the worst pay-per-view in history, although it was among the worst. During the 91 Bash, it was like watching a promotion take many steps down the road to oblivion. The second half of Havoc was the visual example of watching the fat lady sing for the promotion. Based on every imaginable criteria to judge, Watts' reign thus far has been a failure. The live show in Philadelphia drew an estimated 7,000 fans. Best guess would be to be close to 5,000 of that paid, and around an $80,000 house are almost the identical figures the WWF drew at the Spectrum the previous weekend. The gate was probably the largest of the year for WCW. War Games in Jacksonville was the biggest house thus far in 92 at $72,000. So overall, when you guys, are scrapping and everybody's saying things are terrible, but then you draw roughly what the WWF does the prior week, because yes, they're still trying to counter program. You guys are running the Civic Center, so a week before they're going to try to get the wrestling fans money at the Spectrum.
Right.
But it's pretty much an identical house. This has to be viewed as, hey, business may be down, but it's not that much worse than them, right?
Yeah, I think business. I think it was kind of viewed that business was down everywhere.
Cyclical, yeah,
cyclical, and I think we all know how tremendous the WWE was in the '80s. How they, Hulkamania and everything, and things were just down right then.
So in the dark match, Eric Watts tags with Van Hammer, and they beat Vinny Vegas and Diamond Dallas Page after about 12 minutes. When Watts pinned Page with an Oklahoma side roll, it got a -1 star. So process this. On one side, you've got Kevin Nash and Diamond Dallas Page, two Hall of Famers. On the other side, you've got Van Hammer and Eric Watts.
Mm-hmm. I'm processing it.
The corny open here is the same open, or very similar open, to Halloween Havoc 1990 that we talked about before. And I found it odd that you guys are back in Philadelphia again. It feels like whether it was Jim Crockett Promotions or it was WCW, you guys kind of like to stick with one town for a big show. So Great American Bash every year was in Baltimore. And then eventually Starrcade was in Nashville, and then in Washington, D.C. And then here it feels like Halloween Havoc is starting to become a thing in Philadelphia. What was it about Philadelphia that you guys like so well?
It was, Philadelphia's always had a tremendous fan base, great reception. Not only that, there's a lot of, when you're booking towns and booking venues, there's a lot of things that go into, pat on the back, hey, we'll come here on a regular basis. We'll have our big events here. And the people of the building say, we want to have you here. We'll do this for you. So it's all basically on handshake deals and trying to cultivate good relationships. And it's all kind of based on back at that time still. And I know TBS was big, but it was also important that you would have a local syndicated clearance in that town to be able to promote it as well.
So you welcome us to the show, and you're with Bruno Sammartino.
Yeah,
you are not rocking your lipstick here. Why'd you leave your lipstick at home?
Well, because it was the Bill Watts era. He didn't want to have anything to do with that shit. And not only that, I think if you'll recall, by looking at this, I was a rather handsome young man back then.
You've mentioned that a few times. Jesse Ventura was in a mask. He's dressed up. Nobody else is.
Yeah, well, Jesse did what the hell he wanted to do.
Missy Hyatt was too, but why did he get to wear your lipstick that you love so much?
I just probably because I couldn't find a shade that day. What the fuck are you talking about? What are you trying to go with here?
No, you like the Phantom outfit. People like the Phantom outfit.
I didn't need to do it twice in a row. So there, move on, keep going.
Bruno,
I just thought I was very, and to be honest with you, it was, and this has nothing to do with lipstick, cocksucker, but it has to do with the fact that I was pretty thrilled to be working with Bruno, to be honest with you.
So how was he to work with?
Great guy, tremendous guy to work with me. Now, I've never had to be in a room with a finish with him, but he was very, very, and for him to call me Tony was a big moment, I thought. And again, I go back to my days as loving wrestling from back when I was younger. Wow, here I'm working with Bruno Sammartino. Big deal. Two Italians. We love each other.
Should have brought the lipstick. So let's get to the first match here. We've got Shane Douglas tagging with Johnny Gunn, whose real name is Tom Brandy, who most of you know as Salvatore Sincere. He had a little run in the WWF. They have another tag partner, and they take on Arn Anderson, Bobby Eaton, and Michael Hayes. Yeah. Who's the guy that I skipped in the match here?
Let me see. Tom Zink, the Z-Man. Why would you skip him?
Well, I just wanted you to get excited about something and have a little bit of a high spot here. Yeah,
Tom Zink is a fine-looking young man. Johnny Gunn was a good-looking young man. Hey, can I say this? I can call a guy a good-looking young man, but if I call a woman good-looking, half of the people on Twitter are going to say, you're a sexist. You can't even call a woman good-looking anymore. Did you know that? Have you noticed that?
Do you know that you've talked about
in the NCAA tournament, Jim Spanarkel said, I know better than to argue with a good-looking woman, and he took heat about it on Twitter. Can you believe that? What the hell is the world coming to? So I'm going to say that Tom Zink is a handsome man. Salvador Sincere is a handsome guy when he was Johnny Gunn. But I can say that, but if I call Medusa good-looking, ooh, don't say that, you fat son of a bitch. You be seen as a fucking creep. So, anyway, where were we here?
Arn and Eaton are super over with this Philly crowd, but, man, did they hate Gunn and Douglas. Eventually, Gunn makes the hot tag, and then they do the six-way before hitting the finish. The crowd booed this finish, which was a Luthez press on Hayes. They booed it heavily. Hayes is mostly doing commentary here, but they dusted him off for this. 2.5 stars, according to Meltzer. What did you think of this match?
I was shocked that they let Johnny Gunn get the win. I thought if they're going to have Shane Douglas be one of the young superstars, that he would have had the win. Mm-hmm. And he'd have gotten it.
Supposedly, Arn and Eaton are on their way out too. He feels like, he being Watts, feels like they're making too much money. They're making like $260 and $170, and he wants rid of them. So I was surprised that they lost though, or that they didn't take the pin rather than Hayes. But I guess if he's just going to do commentary, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Next up, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, fresh off losing the television title, pins Brian Pillman. This is the best match on the card. It goes just over 10 minutes. They did a double reversal coming off a cool sunset flip off the top rope by Steamboat. Meltzer says the action's very good, but it seemed as if they were just getting started when they went to the finish. These guys could have used a little more time to do the pay-per-view quality match. This one looked to be on paper. Still, at this point, the show was pretty good, 3.25 stars. I thought it was a pretty good match. It says a lot about the talent depth of WCW at this time when your first match on the card has Arn Anderson and Bobby Eaton, and your second match has Ricky Steamboat and Brian Pillman.
Yeah, go back, everyone, and watch this match again, and you'll see why Ricky Steamboat was one of the great performers in our business. Not necessarily because he could do some great things, but because that sumbitch could sell his ass off, man. And he sold in that match. And again, if you sell right, you're putting your opponent over. And therefore, if you beat your opponent, then you've beaten somebody.
Right.
And that's what made Ricky Steamboat great.
Next up, we get Bill Watts coming out to give us some good news. He throws to Missy Hyatt. She does her shtick of trying to find out who is going to be the heel referee.
She was good at that. She was good at that, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to see, because the gimmick here is Rude gets to pick and Chono gets to pick, and there'll be two referees. And essentially, they pick Sasaki to be the ref for Team Japan. Teddy Long is here for this part, too, which is kind of hysterical. And then Bill Watts comes out, as Meltzer describes, for his get himself over to the Marks interview to announce that Terry Gordy was suspended for a contract violation and would be out of the tag title match. Now, in reality, he quit that day. How's this come about? You were there. What happened?
I was there. He quit. He just had one of those things that Watts, a guy didn't come to terms. Terry Gordy didn't give a shit. Terry Gordy could make money in Japan, so fuck off. I don't know if this was Bill Watts coming out to get over with the Marks or not. Bill would just like to be on TV.
Well, he being Gordy, is replaced by Steve Austin.
Yeah, I know that a guy named Terry Gordon was denied his ringside seat as well.
Really?
Yeah. That's just me. You called him Gordon, and I was just trying to be funny.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go to something funny.
No, I was not.
Okay, cool.
I don't have something funny every time we turn around.
No, I can tell you're not in the fucking best mood today.
Really?
So, Harley Race is going to be the heel choice. They see him going into Rude's dressing room. And they announce here that there's been a court injunction and that Rude wouldn't have to wrestle twice. And they are going to instead allow Big Van Vader to wrestle Nikita Koloff to defend Rude's U.S. title for him. So the story here is Rude's the U.S. champion, and he's getting a shot at the NWA title. But they don't want him to wrestle twice, so they've got Vader taking the responsibility for him. So the next up, we've got Vader's destruction of Koloff. And this is kind of fun for what it was.
I liked it.
Meltzer says it destroys the title credibility when a champion can pick someone to defend the title for him. But here he is. Here's Vader, who had put on a little weight since the Clash of the Champions. He had been out of action with an injury. And he's back here now working and wins with a power bomb. Just around 12 minutes, and it gets 2 3/4 stars. I think Nikita is critically underrated, and I love Vader, and I thought this was a fun match for what it was.
I loved it. I agree. I love this match. I think Vader could move as good as any big man. And the fact that you go back and look at that match, how he picked up that chair and really socked Nikita with it, how Nikita did a great job of selling the sickle that hit the ring post, how Vader did some of these great moves, and some slapdick in the stands threw a beer and hit Vader with it, and Vader just shrugged it off like a big monster. I thought this was a great match. I thought it was a great put-over match for Vader. I don't know if it destroyed the credibility of the title, but as Meltzer said, but what is credibility anyway in our business? I thought it was a great match. This was my favorite match of the whole card.
Next up, and let's process the talent we've ran through so far in the actual matches. I can't stress this enough. Shane Douglas is a good performer. Arn Anderson, Bobby Eaton, Ricky Steamboat, Brian Pillman, Nikita Koloff, Vader, and now this. Barry Windham and Dustin Rhodes taking on Steve Austin and Dr. Death, Steve Williams, which is kind of fun because you've got two guys whose real name is Steve Williams tagging. But what a crop of talent, and we're just 4 matches in so far. This match goes a long way. It goes to a 30-minute draw. Lots of really, really good action here, but for whatever reason, the fans just aren't into it. The storyline coming into this was that Windham and Rhodes were having problems. They do a very brief interview in the back where Windham says, no, that's not true. We don't have any problems. And the announcers try to acknowledge it a little bit, but there doesn't seem to be any problem with the work necessarily. Rhodes did bleed in the match, but he didn't, gig himself.
Right.
He was just reopened from an accident that took place earlier in the week. And at some point, they do a false finish with a ref bump. That's about 28 minutes in. And then the match keeps going. And then right there at the 30-minute time limit, of course, somebody has a schoolboy, and the pin doesn't count. So they brawl for a little bit after. Meltzer gives it 3 stars. It's a really good match, but for whatever reason, the fans just weren't digging it. What did you think about this one?
I thought it really brought the whole show down. And again, as you said, for what reason, I don't know. Maybe, let's go back and take a look. Wyndham could work. Dustin could work. And Stunning Steve would later on become one of the great stars of our business. I don't know if you can pin this on Dr. Death Steve Williams or not. I don't know. But the fans weren't having any bit of it. There was no excitement for this match at all. So I can't put my finger on it. But I agree. I thought it was a pretty good match. It was to me, it was always very hard to try to time out a false finish at the bell. When the announcer is counting down 3, 2, and I thought they did as good a job as they possibly could there. I think if you'll go back and look at that, I think the time clock went to 0 on the screen before the actual bell. And why we even put a time clock on there, I don't know.
If you couldn't get it right, it feels
if you couldn't get it right, yeah. The exceptions say, that's WCW. We're a bunch of fuckwads. But that's the only thing I could think of.
In an effort to talk about this match, I guess I somehow missed, we should talk about it. That was Nikita Koloff's last match, his match with Vader. And
his last match ever?
Yeah, he says that it was a stiff clothesline to the head that did it, and I believe he had a Lloyd's of London deal, and he cashed out after this. He said that this blow from Vader herniated a disc in his neck, and I don't know if this happened before or after he broke the back of Joe Thurman, but it feels like the timing of this is suspect at best. Wink, wink. When we see the Thurman injury happen, and now that everybody kind of knows that happens, now Nikita's neck is hurt.
Yeah, you can't say that. It could have been legit. I don't know. If you got a Lloyd's of London deal,
it just feels like. Now, I'm not saying
I know what it feels like, but it's hard to even comment on that.
Did you have a conversation with him about his career-ending injury this night that you didn't even remember till I brought it up?
No.
Okay.
Well, you seem to think, and some of the slapdicks seem to think out there, that I was just like sitting on Bill Watts' knee when everything happened. Come on in. We're going to fire your ass. Right, Tony? Right, Bill? You're fired. Fuck. I was doing TV. I wasn't booking some of this shit.
I asked if you knew about a coworker being hurt, and then you just span off into a Bill Watts diatribe.
Okay. All right. What's next, fucker?
Whatever you want to talk about. You want to talk about Klondike Bill chewing them panties?
Hey, there's a Klondike Bill sighting on that show.
I saw it.
Klondike Bill sighting. I knew you would. It was tremendous. And Klondike Bill also, put the poll up for the
don't skip a hand.
Match.
Don't skip a hand. All right, next up, we get the Paulie Dangerously Medusa skit. It starts out like it's going to be Harley and Vader doing an interview, but then Dangerously comes out, thanks them for the defending of the title for Rude, and says he's going to give half of the payoff to them. So anyway, Medusa comes out, and after a very brief, almost nonsensical build-up, she's fired by Dangerously. Yeah. He basically called her a bitch and then did say that the other hooker he was going to use, which of course implies that she's a hooker. He continues with every put down you can imagine for women and continues to say, you're a woman, I'm a man, blah, blah, blah. So Medusa at this point is probably the most over babyface in the building. Everybody's ready for this. Paul shoves her and then Medusa kicks him in the head. He goes down. She starts wearing him out. And he announces that she's fired and she's nuts. Dangerously is going nuts on the mic. And this kind of wakes everybody up from the coma they were in from the 30-minute tag match that we just had. But this does not age well.
No, it would not have happened today. We'd have been out of business today, or had to apologize for everything that Paulie said. But we do need to say this, and I know fans know this. Freaking Paulie Dangerously could work that mic, couldn't he?
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my God. He was tremendous in this interview. And I'm not talking about what he said, the bad things he said about women. I'm just talking about the delivery. Just absolutely great heel interview. It was tremendous. He was just so good at this. To the point to where I'm watching it again, and, of course, if you go back and look at this, you'll notice that while this is all kind of going down, I'm running around like a little girl. Like, whoa, oh, Oh, I got to get off the stage. They're going to hurt somebody.
Oh yeah, when the beatdown happens, you just take a squat on the bottom left there.
That's right. But I'm surprised that Medusa let it go on as long as it did before she kicked him.
Well, she was milking it, and it worked.
Yeah, sure did. It was good. It was very, very good. Well done.
Talk to me about the office at the time here, because I think we've got Dusty Rhodes, Bill Watts, and Ole Anderson all seemingly coexisting. I would never imagine that could happen.
No, when you want to make money and you want to do business, I think guys like that will let, as the old cliche goes, bygones be bygones and do business. And I don't think Ole was more working on house shows and things like that. Dusty was booking and Watts was in the office. So that's how it kind of worked.
All right. So next up is the match that won the worst match on the show, at least in the Observer. It's Rick Rude defeating Masahiro Chono by disqualification after 22 minutes. So Chono retains the NWA title. And Meltzer writes, this is the match that destroyed the show and the match that destroyed the NWA title in the United States. He finds it interesting that these guys had seemingly the match of the year in their first match and now maybe the worst match of the year in their second match. All the Japanese dignitaries are ringside, and maybe this makes no sense at all. Medusa, who was fired a handful of minutes prior to this, comes out with Rick Rude anyway. And she's a babyface, or seemingly would have been the biggest babyface because she just destroyed Paul E. And now it feels like Rick Rude has still chosen Medusa. So that makes Rick Rude a babyface. I don't understand any of this, but
it makes no sense at all. It makes no sense at all.
And then you've got a heel ref and Harley Race, and he's calling it down the middle.
Right. Absolutely. It makes no sense at all. I think what's trying to go on here is we're trying to make this a legitimate match with Harley Race being a legitimate champion, and in effect, we didn't do anything at all. You know, Bill Watts was very, very big on legitimacy for the title, and that's why this all took place. In reality, you didn't need to make anything legitimate. I didn't think you were smartening up anybody.
About 19 minutes in, a fight breaks out in the crowd, and everybody in the building just looks to that. Do you remember anything about that fight?
Yeah, I remember it going on over on our left, and I got up on the stage to look at it, and it was just a bunch of slapdicks fighting. If you go and you watch, you'll see Harley Race. He wants to see it, too, because he kind of backs and turns to the left. He's calling the match as the referee, and he's trying to watch the fight as well. And even Jesse referred to it.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. That shows you how much the matches sucks. You got the NWA World Title on the line, and they would rather see fans fighting over on the right.
The finish comes when Chono kicks Race in the face after Rude ducks, and so Race goes out of the ring. Sasaki tries to help him up. Chono throws Rude over the top rope, and Rude lands on both guys, knocking him down. Rude gets back in, hits the Rude Awakening, but there's no ref to count. Chono makes a comeback, catches Rude in the STF. Sasaki jumps in the ring and calls for the bell, apparently to signal that Chono is the winner by submission, although neither announcer acknowledged the word submission even existed. And then Race overruled Sasaki and declared Rude the winner by DQ. Yeah. So kind of a screw job finish. It gets the distinction of being one of the worst title matches ever on pay-per-view. Meltzer writes, truly a disaster in every way, -3 stars. You alluded to it earlier. This killed the show, right?
Killed the show. Just absolutely killed the show. And it goes back to, I mean, both those guys could work. I think we all knew that, but I think that it goes back to what Bill Watts saw for the company, and he wanted to make it a sporting event, wanted to go back to the old time wrestling. And, you know, we talked about, you know, everybody's got to have a clean finish in the ring or what. It was just wrong. It was just absolutely wrong. No one gave a shit about Chono. People gave a shit more about Medusa than anybody else by that time, and they did nothing with her. Hell, they didn't even have a close-up of her.
No.
And she looked great in that suit. Didn't even have a close-up of her.
Next up, it's our world title match. And leading up to this, we saw lots of training videos where Cactus Jack was training the Barbarian, and he had stuff like putting cinder blocks on his back and hitting it with sledgehammers. Kind of interesting that they're trying to use Cactus Jack to give Barbarian the rub, because Barbarian had certainly not been presented as a main event caliber performer in a long time, and now they're trying to make everyone believe that Ron Simmons is one here, and I don't know that Barbarian is maybe the right guy for that. Where was that footage filmed where they're showing Cactus training with Barbarian? Is that Dominic DeNucci's, you think?
Yes, absolutely. That's where it was. Listen, this was a job guy match.
It's a shame, but yeah,
it is. It is a jobber match. I love the Barbarian. Always loved Ron Simmons, but it was a job match is what it was.
Meltzer writes, Barbarian is even less of a number one contender and only cost to expose what Simmons wasn't. The match and lack of crowd reaction for a world title match brought this point home. The work was sloppy and the crowd was dead. There was a good near fall when Simmons kicked out of the diving headbutt, and this is one of the worst world title matches ever on pay-per-view.
No question, because it was, again, a squash match is what it was, that went a little bit longer than squash matches normally go.
Ultimately, Barbarian takes the pin after a power slam from Ron Simmons, so a quarter star. And next up, we get an interview with Bruno Sammartino, Eric Watts, and Ron Simmons. The idea here, I guess, is that Watts is going to get the rub from standing along the world champion and a legend like Bruno Sammartino. But apparently it got a lot of people in the back fired up because it felt like not only is Bill putting himself on TV, but now Eric Watts, who hasn't paid any dues, and everybody else is getting their money cut and their benefits cut and their medical cut. Now the Sun is here and in a featured spot.
Well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's how more obvious can you be than what's going on here? The sad point of that, Conrad, is that Eric Watts was and is a great kid. And Eric Watts felt kind of, I don't want to say embarrassed by it, but kind of felt uncomfortable with it. I mean, you obviously want to get a big push, but, he knew what was going on, and I knew Eric very well, and so I know he felt uncomfortable about it. But you're not going to say, no, Dad, I don't want you to push me. You're going to, do it all you can. So, yeah, it was rough. It was really, really rough. Let me go back and say something about the Simmons Barbarian match, and go back and listen to that. As shitty as that match was, JR and Jesse did a hell of a job putting those guys over, man. Hell of a job to make that sound better than it really was.
Let me ask you this.
I didn't realize it at that time, but now that I've gone back and watched it, they really did a great job.
What's up with Jesse Ventura constantly rocking back and forth when he does commentary?
That's all. That's his nervous tick. He always did that. Always.
Just when he's doing commentary?
Huh? No, when he's sitting in the seat talking to you, he's always like that. Always rocking back and forth, like you and I are doing right now.
Yeah.
But that's the way. That's how Jesse was. It's one of his nervous ticks. It was not just commentary, but that's just the way he is. Have you seen him lately?
No.
Yeah, he does the same thing.
So let's talk about what we're really here for. Spin the wheel, make the deal. The video, the little mini movie, is pinned right now at the top of @WHW Monday. Go check that out. They do a segment here on the show where they bring the wheel up from the ground, and it's actually pretty decent looking, and there's all these different matches on there. I have a couple questions here. Number one, what happened to the big elaborate set for Halloween Havoc? Is that just cost cutting? You guys already had the shit.
Yeah. Well, we had the shit, but you got to have a crew to put it up. So that's cost cutting measure.
But then you make this big fucking wheel, which couldn't have been cheap. Who made the wheel? Is that a Klondike Bill?
No, Klondike didn't make the wheel. That was some sort of set designer that made the wheel. And I remember thinking that I knew it was going to be a coal miner's glove match. I remember thinking that we're going to fuck this up too. It's going to end up being something that we did not prepare for.
So the plan was on purpose for it to be a coal miner's glove match.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they had something for that wheel to stop on coal miner's glove.
That is amazing to me that of all the things on there, that's what you wanted.
That's what they want. That's not what I wanted. That's what they wanted. That's what the bookers wanted. What Dusty and Bill Watts wanted.
What is a Prince of Darkness match?
You'd have to have Kellerman Sullivan that. I don't know. Okay, I know what a Prince of Darkness match. That was a match put in there just for fuck all. That's what it was. Okay, we got, how many we got? We got 6, 7. What other fucking match can we put in there? A Prince of Darkness. Okay, let's put Prince of Darkness match. That's all. It was put in there for fuck all.
What was your favorite coal miner's glove match before this one?
My favorite coal miner's glove match was, I don't have a favorite coal miner's glove match.
That's what I'm saying. Shithead. It just seems crazy to me.
Yeah, it is. I never had heard of a coal miner's glove match before this. Had you?
No, and that's why it's so fun, and that's what I want to do right now. If you're able to, I want you to go to the WWE Network right now. Pull up that timestamp again. It's 2 hours, 31 minutes, and 48 seconds. You're in for a real treat today. You've had to put up with an hour of Tony saying, I don't know, bullshit. And now
bullshit.
You're going to get something great.
Fucking shit.
Right here.
An hour of I don't know.
And
I just don't have an answer for everything. I can lie to you.
Well, that's what Bruce does, and it works out.
I'm being honest with you. Fuck you. Where were we?
Here's what we're going to do, kids. The Bob Saget of professional wrestling, Mr. Tony Schiavone, the voice of professional wrestling below the Mason-Dixon line. He is going to call the main event here.
Are you going to be my color guy here?
Well, I'm not any good at this, but I can try to wing it if you want me to. But I'm going to be quiet and just listen until you.
Going to try to wing it. Going to try to. That's what I usually did. I would try to wing it.
So here we go. Get your TVs right. 2 hours, 31 minutes, 48 seconds. Tony Schiavone is back behind the mic and calling this match for the very first time because originally, of course, this is Jim Ross and Jesse Ventura. Well, now we've got the leader of slapdicks himself, Mr. Tony Schiavone.
Yes. Before we do that, Conrad, can I say this?
Yes.
Okay, I would like to say that I was very excited that we got a new box of Blue Apron this week. Because as I'm getting ready to call this match to all of my slapdicks out there, Blue Apron, Lois right now is in the kitchen preparing a great meal of Blue Apron as we speak.
Where she belongs, and she's doing that with, she does have pot holders, but she doesn't have a coal miner's glove. That's
right. Hang on just a sec. Lois, Conrad said you belong in the kitchen. Conrad said that, not me. So anyway, just great food. It's turned things around for us. We have.
It's a strong family bond now that you guys can motherfuck each other.
Yes, it is. And I've actually gone in the kitchen and cut up some stuff too. How about that? In the kitchen, cutting up some cabbage or cutting up some apples,
kielbasa,
or carrots. And again, this deal is for you listening to our podcast out there, because when you start ordering Blue Apron, you're going to get hooked because it's going to cost you less than $10 per person per meal. You can't get that going out to eat. I know you paid for my dinner on WrestleMania weekend. And it was a little bit more than $10 a person, wasn't it?
It was a little bit more, but I can't say that it was any better, especially when you've got menu items like spinach and fresh mozzarella pizza with olives, bell peppers, and ricotta salata, or Parmesan crusted chicken with creamy fettuccine and roasted broccoli. It's good eating. It's affordable. They've got a great variety. You're never going to get repeats on your menu. It's very flexible. It's easy. It's so easy that even Tony can do it, and the recipes are so easy that Lois can cook it. But best of all, it's guaranteed, which everybody needed for this shitty Halloween Havoc 92 pay-per-view. I wish there was a guarantee for that, but there wasn't, but there is for BlueApron.com. And you slapdicks get to try your very first 3 meals for how much, Tony?
For free. Absolutely free.
How much is shipping, though? That's where they always get you.
There's no shipping. No shipping charge. You'll get a big box of your first week meals absolutely free. Now, that's 3 meals for your first week. You go to blueapron.com/Tony. Blueapron.com/Tony. You love how good it feels, tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so don't wait. Blueapron.com/Tony. Remember, Conrad, Blue Apron, and we know this for a fact in the Schiavone household, is a better way to cook.
And he also knows how to call terrible horseshit wrestling matches from 25 years ago, and it's time to do it. Are you ready, Mr. Schiavone?
I am ready, sir.
So let's go to 2 hours, 31 minutes, and 48 seconds and press play right now.
Well, there we take a look at the glove on top of the pole. How fucking tall is that pole anyway? Holy shit. Hell, and look at those two cocksuckers at ringside. Jim Ross and Jesse the Body Ventura. And look at the kids. Wow. What a great match this is going to be, Conrad. I'm so glad you could set your fat ass down here with me and call this action, because we are getting ready to go with this coal miner's glove match. Now, let's let everybody know the rules once again. You got to go up the pole. Good fucking luck on that. You got to grab the glove, and then you can use the glove to win the match. As you can see, the match has, or the pole, the glove has something around it. And I guess that's to break the coal up. I guess people from West Virginia would know that. I don't know that. That pole's got to be 20 foot in the air. There is no way anybody's going to look at that. There's no way anybody's going to get up that goddamn pole. Ooh, Jake the Snake Roberts has made his way in from Stone Mountain, Georgia. Man, look how pissed he looks. How much did I give up in WWE merchant fucking dice? Holy shit. And Jake the Snake Roberts, yeah, it's funny. Jim Ross had said during the course of this, Conrad, that and I laughed about this, the fact that we have anti-Cobra Venom at ringside.
What does he not have on him right now, Tony?
He does not have his snake on him right now, right?
Well, he might have his snake, but he doesn't have the one in a bag on him. And
that's right. And Jesse's wondering where the snake is. And now we await the arrival of Sting. And as you can see, we have a capacity crowd here at Philadelphia Civic Center. It's so full, we're not having the lights on them. Everything's in the dark. You can only see the people at ringside. And through the slapdicks comes Sting. And here's what I want to say about this. I hope Sting sells this match as well as he sold the wheel coming to the floor. Because if you'll recall, when the wheel rose to the floor, he sold that like he was scared to death of a fucking wheel. Yeah, Sting. Woo. All right. That guy doesn't want to be here. Yeah, fuck you. Let's look at that. Walk away. Told the camera, get out of his face. Only in Philadelphia. Now, again, this is a non-sanctioned match, which means it's not sanctioned by the NWA. They, though, did sanction the Rick Rude and debacle that we saw moments ago. But what the fuck is Jack talking about here?
Oh, he's distracting him. He's going right up the road.
He's going right. He wants to get out. He's trying to get back to New York. He's trying to get back to the WWE, and Sting won't let him. He's got him up. Oh, my God. Match over. No, Jake's getting back up. Whew. I thought for sure he was going back and catching a flight to Stamford, Connecticut. But nope, Jake is back up. Sting is going to try to go to the pole. Can you believe how big this pole is? Klondike Bill, by the way, constructed this pole. He put this pole up, and I'll bet you that nobody in the front office told him how high or how low to put the pole. I can't believe anybody's going to get up the pole, but here we go again. A collar and elbow tie-up. See, I know the holds as well. Oh, he missed. And what is he trying to do, cover up here? Sting took this seriously. He really did. I think the reason Sting took it seriously is that he knew a snake would be involved. And I don't know about you, Conrad, but anytime there's a fucking snake, I'm scared to death. Jake the Snake Roberts up against the ropes. A whip in. Sting with a right hand, and down goes Jake. Boy, Jake had the look, man. But not going towards the pole. Now, I don't understand why he went at first to try to go for the glove, and now I didn't try it right there. Maybe it's because when he got to the pole, he realized how fucking high up in the air it was. So now side headlock. As you can tell, the fans here in Philadelphia are kind of sitting on their hands right now. They have just seen two shitty world title matches, so why not stay on your hands for the main event? Oh, get your cold drinks. Sting up high. Oh, he missed a drop kick. And Jake drives a knee into the back. Conrad, are you going to commentate this match with me, or is it just going to be fucking me?
What I found interesting about this setup here, Tony, is that it appears as if the ring is crooked. The camera is not shooting directly over into the ring. It almost feels like the ring is not angled correctly, or maybe the camera's not. Your two cents here?
Yeah, the ring looks kind of cockeyed, right? Kind of looks left to right like it's going downhill there.
Yeah.
I had been at some events in Cincinnati where the ring actually broke. So the ring, over the top.
No pads around the floor here. That can't feel good.
Tough guys in WCW. Now they go to the ring post. And Jake the Snake is selling the arm now. Where in the hell is Sting going? Going to the pole? No, he comes back through. I think Sting got lost there, don't you? Oh, and he pulls Jake again to the ring post one more time. Well, Jake's going to have to sell this the rest of the match as he hits that ring post. And now Sting should have a free shot here to get the glove, don't you think? Well, here comes Jake back in. Sting way up top reaching for it. He grabs him by the ass. He's got him. Oh, and he drops him down again. No coal miner's glove yet. A pickup. Belly to back suplex. God, I forgot how shitty these matches were to call.
Hypothetically speaking, Tony, who would be your favorite two performers to see in a pole match, climb a pole like this? And why is it Medusa and Deborah?
Just because I love Medusa and Deborah. And I know what you're trying to make me an old horny motherfucker, but you're wrong. And they pull on the arm again. Sting working the arm. This is one of the things I liked about Jake the Snake. He had the great look, great talk, but the guy could sell as well. And I know what you're saying out there. Schiavone is always big into selling, but doesn't it make the match better?
It does.
When they sell?
And there's some logic here in working the same body part the whole time.
No question. Sting stomping on the left arm once again, pushing down. Jake staying on the ring, and
what's Jake
the ring mat
about
trying to
right
get up.
Now?
What's that?
What's Jake thinking about right now?
Thinking about, oh, man, what the fuck am I doing back here? And how far is it going to take me to get up on the pole? Well, the good news is Sting is probably going to be the one to go up and get the coal miner's glove. But remember, once they get the glove, that doesn't mean the match is over. They can use it. Remember, now over the top, and that normally would be a disqualification, but remember, this is not sanctioned by WCW. Now Jake is going to go up top. Jake's going to try to scale the pole. Sting grabs Jake by the ass. Oh! Jake the Snake.
He hit his venom glands.
He sure did. And that is, oh, my goodness, on the turnbuckle, the steel turnbuckle that goes between the pad and the ring post. But look at Jake trying to get up. Jake, this is pretty good strategy here, holding on to Sting, knowing where he is. Or is Sting stepping on his head? I can't tell from where we are. Sting goes right back to the shoulder once again. It's amazing to me that Jake the Snake can even get up on his feet after what has happened here.
Who's our referee today, Tony?
I have no idea.
There's the ECW hat guy in the front row.
The ECW hat guys in the front row.
2 seats over from Vladimir. Super
Vladimir's
fan.
there. Yeah, Vladimir's been around forever, hasn't he? Jesus. He's as old as I am. And Sting goes right back to the arm. So this guy is the ECW hat guy who's not even watching the fucking match right now?
Would you be?
Well, I would have to because I would be calling it.
I mean,
back on the arm once again.
There we go.
All right. Trying to work on the arm. Remember, this is the main event of Halloween Havoc, an event that started here in Philadelphia and had so much momentum, and has completely gone down the shitter from there.
Fans are getting into it, barking orders at Jake. They do not like Jake.
No. Fans say, come on, do fucking something. They just watch a Rick Rude headlock for about 10 minutes, so they want some action. Oh, and out they go. Both men outside. Now, remember, once again, non-sanctioned, no disqualification, anything goes. Watch out. He's got a challenge. Shit, right on the back. That's going to keep Sting down for quite a while, and maybe Jake the Snake can get back into this. both men are obviously winded. Jake just told the referee something, calling a spot here.
What's Gary Michael Capetta doing on a headset outside?
Yeah, I have no idea. Nothing else to do. No, Gary, they tell Gary when to say 10 minutes gone in the match, 20 minutes gone in the match, 30 minutes gone in the match. Okay? I thought Gary was... Why do we keep shooting that pole? I thought Gary was a very good...
He's choking him, Tony.
Oh, my God. What does he have?
Wrist tape.
Wrist tape? You sure that's not dental floss? It could cut him around the throat, and there's nothing the referee can do here. Nothing at all.
If it's not sanctioned, why is the referee trying to stop him?
I guess he's trying to, so he doesn't kill him.
Oh.
I mean, he's going to kind of murder that motherfucker. And the referee now says, okay, out of here. So Jake now feels... Jake now feels, well, since I can't murder the motherfucker. Oh, and he missed the move. Sting just moved out of the way in time. And sometimes I wonder why that there weren't enough people murdered. And Jake is rolling up on his front side. Once again, this is a match to make Sting a big star. And I think Jake is doing a very good job here. Moving out of the way of the Stinger splash. Now will Jake try to scan the pole? Is that the right word, scan the pole? That would be a scan would be a kind of a word that we would use here in 2017, but not in 1992.
Do you ever have anybody scan your pole?
No, not since the 90s. And Jake is now going to go up. Well, God damn it, Jake. Don't talk about it. Go up. Let's go.
Still selling that arm.
Yeah, you notice down the lower portion of your screen, there's Bill Apter. Oh, there's the DDT.
Big pop right there for that.
Yeah, big pop. Why? Because the move is over. And that should be it. With the DDT, that should absolutely be it. Jake should be able to go up and get the glove.
But he can't climb if his left arm doesn't work, Tony.
Apparently not. But he's going to try. So here comes Sting back. There goes Jake up. Jesus Christ, Sting, get him. He got him. I actually think at this moment in the match that things are looking...
Wow.
What the hell? Oh! What the fuck was that? Was that Sting doing a pole dance?
Oh, my gosh. What's going on here?
Oh, I have no idea. It's Cactus Jack has come out. Oh, my goodness. That's got to be a snake in that bag.
This could be the Prince of Darkness match we were talking about earlier.
That's got to... Oh, there's a fucking snake. Oh, my God. I hate a fucking snake.
Sting's on top of a pole. That's not a sentence you thought you'd hear. He's got the glove on.
He's got the glove. I'm looking at the snake. That's what she said. And now Jake is trying to get the snake. What? He's kissing the snake? Or what the fuck is going on here? Was that a pin?
He pulled
and
it away.
We give
he
a
put
shit?
It back.
Oh, my God. Is that snake biting Jake Roberts on the face? The referee is running away. Sting saying, fuck this shit. The heck with the coal miner's glove. Jake has got a snake caught onto his jaw. Who came up with this fucking finish? Holy shit.
It's hooked on, Tony. Look at there. There's blood.
Oh, my God. And Cactus Jack doesn't even want to have part of it. And
it's
we
really
know Cactus Jack will do anything. The snake almost dropped off, but Snake pushes it back on. Cactus Jack falls down. There's Klondike Bill. Oh, my God. Holy shit. No wonder this thing was minus 8 stars or whatever it was.
Wait,
give Jake Roberts some credit. He's trying to make this thing work.
He's got to get to the back, Tony. That anti-venom that we heard about before we ever saw a snake.
Oh, holy shit, a moly. Look at Cactus. Cactus says, I want to help you, but fuck that fucking snake. Oh, my God.
In 2017, would we ever see a snake just get manhandled like this on TV?
No, and look at Sting.
What's he wear? It feels like he's about to go do yard work. Where are the shovels? I mean, that's what you wear when you shovel something, and he just buried WCW.
Exactly. So here we got the end of a pay-per-view, Halloween Havoc. You always should go out with the fans feeling good about it, right? About the pay-per-view. So let's go to these two fuckers to talk about it, and then we'll go to me with Bruno Sammartino to say something. Fuck all. And here we go. All right, let's go to Schiavone, because Schiavone isn't worth a fuck. Okay, there you go. Bruno Sammartino. Bruno, I got a question for you. What the fuck am I been doing on this pay-per-view? I don't know, Tony. From one whop to the other, I have no fucking idea. Bruno, good to talk to you. I hope you got a big payday out of this. This fucking event sucked. Wouldn't you agree? Absolutely. I would fucking agree. All right. In 2017, years from now, we'll still say it sucked. Let's go back to the ringside area.
Well, so there you go. That'll conclude our fun little experiment today. Meltzer says that Jake has a tremendous personality, one of the best in the business, but he suffered too many injuries to be able to work on top as a singles wrestler in a group where fans expect action. Jake is
I thought he did pretty good.
I thought he did fine, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Meltzer's assessment there, but I thought Jake did a very good job in that match. And I thought it was all working pretty well until the fucking snake gimmick. I just don't get that. I mean, that obviously was not a cobra, or Jake would have been dead. That was a snake, and the snake didn't even want to hook onto his face.
The swing around the pole from Sting was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
That's I like the Cactus Jack run-in with the snake bag, but Ross really fucking showed his cards too early to me when he says, we do have anti-vent. He doesn't have a snake with him. Why are you saying there's no snake?
He said that right at the beginning of the event.
Before the snake was even there. And
right.
I don't understand this glove, and I just had fun and just Googled coal miner's glove, and like on a Google image search, and one of the very first things that pops up, like in the first row, is a picture from this match, because that's pretty much all anybody knows. And I thought it was so hokey the way Roberts had to pull the snake to make it look like it was biting his cheek.
Yeah.
And then it clearly comes away. He has it off, but then he puts it back, and like right in front of the camera.
Yeah, right.
And according to Meltzer, the snake wasn't actually supposed to gnaw on Robert's cheek and him bleed, but it happened. It got a 1/4 star in the Observer, and I found it interesting that Bruno Sammartino was here, because he had been very critical of all things wrestling, and you've got guys on here who are clearly on the gas, and there's some false, some screw job finishes, and now you've got this silliness with the snake. It feels a little weird.
It does, but he and Bill Watts were good buddies, and he got a payday, and, so why not?
Prior to the show, there was a big rumor going around the WWF, and it was even reported in the New York Daily News that Sid Vicious was going to be Rick Rude's choice as a referee. Obviously, that wasn't the plan at any time, and I always wondered, how do rumors like that get out there unless it starts with the talent, right?
That's where it starts. It starts with the talent, and as the old, the old line, the old cliche. How do you get the word out? Telephone, telegraph, tell a wrestler.
Ultimately, though, as fun as this was, for us to call and kind of poke fun at how bad WCW is going out of business, check this shit out. They got a .95 buy rate, which was more than double the buys for the Beach Blast pay-per-view or the Great American Bash. In fact, it was the largest buy rate for WCW in more than a year. Yeah. That correlated to about 190,000 buys, or a $3.8 million gross, which was one of the largest ever for the company.
What did Battle Bowl do the next time, though? Because that's what you kind of got to look at the next pay-per-view, I think, because if you get a shitty pay-per-view, well, fans want to come back and buy the next one.
Oh, no question. No question. But for us saying, hey, this is it, Watts is shit in the bed. Well, it looks like, he's cutting expenses and he's bringing in more.
Right.
And they know that this finish was not done well. Meltzer writes, the promotion itself had already decided the Sting Roberts finish didn't come off well, since Watts taped an interview banning the reptile, most likely before the meeting even took place, which means Jake won't be using the snake anymore, even as a prop on interviews. Whether this is the case or not, I don't know, but there's been a lot of finger pointing going on to the poor quality of the second half of the Havoc show. But supposedly the finish was Robert's idea because he felt like them having a snake latch onto his face, the idea being that it wasn't supposed to bite him, just get near, and Roberts could control that it would be so shocking that the audience wouldn't remember that he had just done a clean job. And while there is truth to that assumption that people wouldn't remember, they also don't remember that Sting won. And he gets no benefit from winning at a time when they needed him to have a strong win, since Sting had just lost 2 big shows. So the show ends here. It's a huge financial success. This is Jake Roberts' last WCW pay-per-view. He's on his way out. The Steiners are going to the WWF. Gordy has quit. Sting is losing a little luster. And that next weekend, Big Van Vader would break the back of Joe Thurman in either his first or second match because he didn't know how to take a power bomb. And initially, Thurman was paralyzed, but then Watts gave a speech to the guys a week later and said that was a work, but don't be so brutal on the guys that are working as enhancement talent. So that's kind of your glimpse into Halloween Havoc 92. Lots of high points and low parts. I'll always remember the snake thing most of all. And then maybe after that, as crazy as it sounds, probably the Medusa Paul E thing. What stands out to you the most?
The Medusa Paul E thing to me was the highlight of the show. And again, I go back to Vader. And Vader beat up on these job guys all the time, but he beat up on Nikita there as well. I liked that match a lot. Paul E and Medusa. Paul E's work at the mic is as good as better than anyone. And again, and fans will have to go back and look at this. The matches were shitty, but especially the Ron Simmons Barbarian match. Listen to JR and Jesse the Ventura put those guys over. They made them seem bigger than life, and they made that match seem better than it was.
Who made the coal miner's glove for the company? Do you know?
Yeah, Bill did. Klondike.
Do you know how Jake got along with his dad, Grizzly? Because Grizzly's in the office here, and I know they're kind of estranged. Do you know what their relationship was like working together here?
Yeah, they didn't have much to do with each other at all. They pretty much ignored each other during that time. If fans go back and look at this, Grizzly was one of the guys that came running out when Medusa and Paulie had their little pull apart. Grizzly was out. I think Mike Graham came out as well. But yeah, I mean, I think it's well documented, Jake's relationship with his father, which I didn't realize back at that time,
right,
what happened in the past. But I know that they just pretty much ignored each other. At least in front of the boys they did.
How hard was it to have 2 world titles on the show at the same time like this?
It made no sense. It made absolutely no sense. Look, the belt that Chono came out with was the belt.
Right.
And it made the WCW belt look like a piece of shit in comparison. So belt-wise, the NWA title was bigger, but in reality, if we're WCW, we want our title to mean more than the NWA title, right?
Seems just like a mess.
It was. It made no sense at all. It's just trying to be legitimate, trying to make it, instead of making it a show, an entertainment show, make it a legitimate wrestling product, which in 1992 and even more so today didn't work. No one bought it. No one bought grabbing a side headlock and grinding in and selling it for 5 minutes. No one bought that shit in 92. And obviously no one's going to buy it today. Wrestling business had changed, and Bill Watts, who I loved working for, was not ready for it to change in 1992.
Well, one thing that shouldn't have changed, or maybe should have changed, is they should have had Jake Roberts do an interview on the show. You know, everybody agrees that he's one of the greatest talkers of all time, and he doesn't even speak into the microphone on this day. It seems really odd to me.
Yeah, we never did have enough interviews. And if we had more interviews, the Rude and Chono match wouldn't have been so long.
Yeah.
A lot of times that's why you do those interviews. But the way to get over was doing interviews. I mean, that was the old school thing. That's how Ric Flair got. I mean, we all know Rick can work, but he got over because he could talk. Dusty wasn't the greatest worker in the world, but he could talk, It was the interviews that brought you in that got you excited about the matches. We never had enough of those on any of our pay-per-views back in the old days, back in those days. And that was wrong. And obviously, when you're talking about Jake, it was wrong not to have him talk. Give you a perfect example. Spin the wheel, make the deal. I stood up there with my dick in my hand holding out a microphone thinking Sting was going to say something. He said nothing. Why did he say nothing? Why didn't he talk about it? Again, it's a lack of pre-planning, lack of organization. Now they rehearse everything. Back then, we didn't rehearse shit. We just talked about it. And obviously, you saw how things a lot of times came off. Shitty.
Well, let's get to our poll because we want to make sure that next week's show is not shitty, and we want to hear from you. We've been having fun going year by year with WCW. Why would we break it up now? Let's start backwards. It's going to be October 24th, 1993, Halloween Havoc. In the main event, a Texas death match with Big Van Vader taking on Cactus Jack. For the WCW International World Heavyweight Championship, you've got Rick Rude challenging Ric Flair. We've got Sting and Sid Vicious, the Nasty Boys, taking on Marcus Alexander Bagwell and Too Cold Scorpio, Dustin Rhodes and Steve Austin, Lord Steven Regal and Davey Boy Smith, Paul Orndorff and Ricky Steamboat, Ice Train, Charlie Norris, and the Shockmaster, taking on Harlem Heat and the Equalizer. It's Halloween Havoc 1993. The show right before that, well, it's Fall Brawl 93. This one's from September 1993. In the main event, you've got Sting, Davey Boy, Dustin Rhodes, and the Shockmaster taking on Sid Vicious, Vader, and the Harlem Heat. For the WCW International title, Rick Rude and Ric Flair again. In a singles match, we've got Yoshi Kwan and Cactus Jack. We've got the Nasty Boys taking on Arn Anderson and Paul Roma. Ice Train taking on Shanghai Pierce. Too Cold and Marcus Alexander Bagwell taking on the Equalizer and Paul Orndorff. Charlie Norris and Big Sky, and then Lord Steven Regal taking on Ricky Steamboat, this time for the WCW World Television title. It's Fall Brawl 1993. Then we've got Beach Blast 93. This is from July of 93. In the main event, we've got the Superpowers, which is Sting and Davey Boy taking on the Masters of the Powerbomb, Big Van Vader and Sid Vicious. Just before that, a world title match with Ric Flair and Barry Windham. We've got Dustin Rhodes and Rick Rude. The Hollywood Blondes, Brian Pillman and Steve Austin, taking on Paul Roma and Arn Anderson. Johnny B. Bad taking on Max Payne. Lord Steven Regal taking on Eric Watts. Too Cold and Bagwell taking on Tex and Shanghai. And Paul Orndorff taking on Ron Simmons in a world television match. It's Beach Blast 1993. And then your last show from 1993 that's going on the poll. February 1993, it's Super Brawl 3. And in the main event, we've got Big Van Vader taking on Sting in a White Castle of Fear strap match. We've got Barry Windham and the Great Muta for the NWA World title.
Did you say White Castle of Fear?
White Castle of Fear.
What the fuck?
Not the little cheeseburgers, a match. Dustin Rhodes and Max Payne for the U.S. title. The Rock and Roll Express taking on the Heavenly Bodies, which here is Tom Pritchard and Stan Lane. Cactus Jack and Paul Orndorff. Davey Boy Smith and Bill Irwin. Too Cold Scorpio and Chris Benoit. And then the Hollywood Blondes, Brian Pillman and Steve Austin taking on Eric Watts and Marcus Alexander Bagwell. There's just so much talent in WCW right here. Super Brawl 3 is one of your poll options. Beach Blast 93, Fall Brawl 93, and Halloween Havoc 93. Go cruise over right now at WHW Monday. Throw down your vote. We'd love to hear what you want to hear next week. And don't forget to check out our forum. It's WHWradio.com. That's where you'll see a link for this video, this little miniature movie of all things Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal. And we're also going to have it pinned on Twitter. So I am at Hey, it's Conrad. He is at Tony Schiavone 24. Our show account is at WHW Monday. And you'll see that video there. And, of course, at WHWradio.com. It's free to join the message board. We'd love to have you come out and play and develop a little bit of a sense of community with all the listeners who enjoy the show, where we kind of trade ideas and questions and videos. It's a good time. WHWradio.com. And I can't help but notice, Tony, when I look at my clock right now, it's about that time.
Yes, it is. And I like to say this, Conrad,
thank God 1992 is fucking over. And thank God we're going to move on to 1993, and thank the Lord that we're going to put it all behind us, because right now we're at the very end of a Medusa on the pole match. It's Klondike Bill and Conrad Thompson going at it in the center of the ring. Woo, there's a belly bump. Woo, there's another one. And, Medusa has fallen off the pole. And here comes Tony Schiavone in to grab Medusa. And here comes Jake the Snake. He's got his snake in his hand. Fuck a fucking snake. We're out of time. WHW, what happened when? See you next week.